Okay, so I'm going to show you how I use Photomatix to merge multiple exposures into an HDR image. And in this particular case, I've started with 3 bracketed exposures. One is taken with 1 stop underexposed, one is taken at the base exposure time, and another is taken at 1 stop overexposed. So in the overexposed image, we're seeing a lot more detail in the foreground, and in the underexposed image, we're seeing more detail in the sky. But first, before I go into Photomatix, I'm going to start in Lightroom and make a few tweaks to the settings. I don't know what I've done here, so I'm just going to back it all out. Okay, so I'm going to adjust the color temperature. I can make it warm. I can make it really cool. But I think I'm going to go with something around here. And then I'm going to adjust the tint a little bit, bring in a little bit more magenta. I don't think I need to adjust the exposure. This is my base exposure, I believe, and the histogram on that's pretty good. I will increase the clarity a little bit, vibrance a little bit, and the saturation a little bit. Now also, I want to make sure I have chromatic aberration removal taken care of. And also we'll also remove some lens distortions. Okay, so next thing to do is take the settings that I've put on this image and copy them over to the other images. So we're all dealing with the same settings. Trying to see if they are all lined up, and they look to be. That's because I used a tripod, although sometimes tripods get bumped in between, and so it's kind of off, but that's okay because Photomatix can take care of that problem. So to put them into Photomatix, I select them all, right-click on it, hit the Export, Photomatix Pro, and come up with these options. I could remove ghosts, but there is no movement, so I don't need to do that. And the chromatic aberrations I already removed in Lightroom. And Photomatix takes them all, puts them all together, and we're left with this particular image. Now, what we can do in Photomatix is leave it as is, or we can play with the different presets that are available. And what you can do, if you find one you like, you can start with that and stick with it. Or you can make some changes or adjustments to whatever you see have a good starting point for. I'm going to go back to the default. It's a little bit bright for my taste, so I will drop the white point a bit, and that's not going to do enough. I can also increase the gamma. That helps a little bit. So now it's getting to be a little bit darker, but you may notice that the foreground is lit differently than the mountains in the background, but there's this lighting adjustments. And I can increase the saturation here a bit, because I think when I was going through these presets, I saw some increased saturation images that I kind of like the look of, so let's start with that. Smooth highlights will affect just the highlights, and usually you can see it in the clouds, and I really prefer more contrast in my images, so I'm not going to mess with that. And I can slide my black point around to make my darks even darker, but I don't want to do that. I've already adjusted my gamma, and in the temperature I can change it so that it's warmer, so that it'll have more yellow in the image, or I can move to the left and it'll be more blue. But I think I was pretty happy with where it was at the beginning. So I'll drag that back to 0. Okay, so micro smoothing does some of the things that smooth highlights does, but I prefer not to have much micro smoothing. Okay, so then we can deal with the saturation of the highlights and the saturation of the shadows. Boosting up the highlights, you can see the mountains have lit up a bit. Boosting the shadows is going to light up the rocks down here. And the shadow smoothness, actually moving the slider to the right makes it darker. But I don't want to make it any darker than I already have. So I'm okay with that, and I really don't want to adjust the clipping of the shadows. At this point, I think I'm done with Photomatix. So I'm going to go ahead and save this image, and it's going to go back into Lightroom. Now, one of the things that Photomatix doesn't do is it doesn't re-import your image into a collection if you were in a collection before with those 3 images. So I need to go back to the folder and the library, find it. There it is, add it to the quick collection again, and now it's in there with all the others. So what am I going to do? I'm going to take a look at the difference between here is the HDR on the left, and on the right we have one of the raw images, another raw image. This image on the left is what we got from merging these 3 images on the right. Now, what you can do is stop right there and say you're done. But I usually go through and take this image into Photoshop and deal with it more there. But I will do that another time. Thanks for watching, and if you have any questions, let me know. And I will see you next time.